Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Doing quite well. How are you?
Good. Can't complain.
Awesome.
Let me see something. All right. Um. So yeah, I'm good.
All right. So tell me a bit about yourself. Now, you scheduled this appointment, and I'm wondering, what's your motivation behind speaking with me today?
Yeah. So I just wanted to just make more connections in the esports industry. I kind of got into it by luck a little bit. I kind of fell into it by no part of my own. I didn't grow up gaming. I didn't play video games. Um, it wasn't until some of my friends in college were all playing Fortnite, and I couldn't. I mean, got to the point where we couldn't have conversations without mentioning Fortnite at some level, and I didn't know what it was. So I was like, I gotta figure out what this thing is. So I learned about it and learned all I could about it, and then I kind of put it away. And then I graduated college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And someone mentioned esports, and I was like, well, I know a little bit about the industry, more than some, less than most. So I got into it heavily. I started researching a lot more and getting into it, and then I realized, well, it's a really connected industry, so you have to have connections in the industry. So let me use LinkedIn and the power of that to try and build some connections and relationships with people.
Awesome. Okay, man. So you've done a great job with networking in that respect. So, you've been able to schedule this appointment, be able to access me and my network now. So, like, is there any specific things that you want, or like, are you looking to learn something from this discussion, or like, what are you after, man?
No, so yeah, I mean, I'm just like, so right now I'm just learning more about esports marketing, especially non-endemic brands, how non-endemic brands are using esports marketing to grow their brand. I got into it because I was into social media marketing. So I was really into social media marketing, and that's where I wanted to be at. And then I realized, just by researching and stuff, that the engagement rate of streamers on social media has a massive more engagement than most. Like I was looking at Nick Merckx and people like Dr. Lupus and Batman. They had engagement up to like 5 to 6%, 7% engagement versus the average of 2 to 3% engagement on social media. So those type of numbers really got me intrigued, and so I wanted to figured this is really good for brands, especially who are trying to market to different groups of people, and not just the same demographic as things are evolving and things are changing. You have to be able to leverage this industry, and I mean Syracuse put out a report last year saying that it should double, it should go past the NBA, MLB, and viewership to be only behind NFL, which I was like, that's interesting. That's dope. Realizing that some of that viewership has to comes from Asia. Probably 50% comes from Asia, but still, that's a lot. That's a big market, and for companies that are going global, as we can become a global society, leveraging that industry now is huge because it's going to pay you dividends in the future.
Of course. So, uh, as you might know, I'm a chief or executive marketing officer for an organization called Illuminate Esports, and so we've got professional Rainbow Six Siege esports team, and then we've got content creators and streamers and things like that. So, what you're saying is right on the money, right? You're exactly right. And I want to dive down deeper and really break down what you're talking about in terms of the process. So, you mentioned some facts and figures about marketing, and then you also mentioned the dividends paying out over the years, 5 7 years out, and so or even more. So there's a part of what you're saying which is business acumen side. So like you got to know the
Yeah,
business side of it, but then there's also the part of it where if you're a content creator or if you're a esports athlete, and if you don't exactly have this business acumen, right, you wouldn't know about all these things that you're talking about, and it's very difficult to teach somebody this, right, without them actually experiencing it. So
yeah.
I want to ask you, How did you first get into this sort of business side of the esports industry, and what was your experience with that?
Yeah, I haven't gotten into the business side really. That was all by academic research. So, by first and foremost, I'm a researcher. I'm a researcher and learner. And so, if there's information to be had on the internet or to be read in a book, I'm gonna find it for the most part. And so, I just delved deep and got my hands a little dirty and just grinded out material after material after material to find out all this information. Like I said, most of my business aspect comes from social media marketing. So I had to apply social media marketing or marketing principles from social media aspects and extrapolate those into esports after what I was reading. And then I have degrees in political science and theology. So what that does for me is it teaches me how to think critically and analyze things at a fast rate and be able to see patterns when some people don't see patterns. And so I kind of used all of that knowledge and skills I have to try to reverse engineer the esports marketing industry and understand the business part of it wholly. Obviously, I mean, there's some things I have to learn still, especially about when it comes to contract negotiation. Like I was talking to someone recently about how a lot of large brands want to do short-term campaigns, whereas some of the more endemic brands are looking to do long-term campaigns because they know they're going to be there for the space for a while. So how do you measure ROI and KPIs for short-term bursts and growth for someone like a Safeway Auto Group who does glass servicing, right? But then also you see deals like Louis and Nike coming in with long-term commitments to teams saying, hey, we're going to invest in long-term. So you're going to start seeing, I think, probably in 2020, especially in 2021, non-endemic brands inking long-term deals. I could really see it's becoming the new NASCAR industry per se. When you see a lot of companies getting involved with it, static imaging on stream or like one-time, two-time burst. As we see a decline in NASCAR viewership and we see a decline in NASCAR branding, I think you'll see some of that branding money start coming into esports heavily. So I think that's where the biggest that's because obviously you can't just create new money. So right, money has to come from somewhere. Money has to be pulled from a company has to pull money from somewhere else to invest in esports. And they realize that if they're investing in NASCAR now, NASCAR doesn't have their enough funds or not generate enough funds for them to continue to invest in it, then pulling money from NASCAR to go to esports could be huge. And that's already a huge branding industry. So it just means more money in esports, but there's already a ton of money into it. So that's how I got there. Not the traditional way. Most people learn on the fly. I learned through the books and through extrapolating ideas and then confirming them in talks with you and other people as well.
Yeah. So again, Sal, you're exactly right on the money. So with what I do, especially, there's a lot of, like you mentioned, brands, whether they're endemic or not, they're going to invest in esports, right? They're going to see what's happening. They're going to see the crazy valuations. So they're going to see the higher in terms of the esports marketplace, right? The user experience, right? All the engagements are usually higher in terms of like if you have an esports fan, they're going to go out to an event. They're going to go, participate in whatever, gaming or social environment that they can participate in, right? In their local area. And if they don't, right, then they're going to want to watch streams or YouTube videos online, right? So that engagement's going to be pretty high. And what you're saying is right on the money, man. You've got this, long-term, I guess, plan, right? Long-term strategy that you've been able to envision and you've been able to research it. And you're very correct in what you're doing. So thank you for that, man. I respect that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it like, so I don't know if you're familiar with the con industry, like basically like Comic-Con and that industry. But kind of what I was looking at it, I was reviewing it and researching it, especially when it comes to all of the like TwitchCon or you have like esports events, whether it's GuardianCon or whatever. The amount of fan awareness and fan dedication to making sure they attend these events is reminiscent of those old-fashioned kind of styles, like Comic-Con and things, where people are investing money into it, investing into time of creating costumes and stuff. And that just means there's higher engagement and people from around the world and globe are traveling to these events just to meet their favorite streamer because they know they're going to be there. It's just greater access, right? Because so when Comic-Con was huge and it still is huge, but when these things were big, especially like I'm thinking of like Star Trek and things, the social media world didn't exist. I mean, it wasn't. You saw them on TV, and you could see them at events, but it was still kind of surreal. Whereas now, they're in your living room every day. These folks are in your living room. You're watching them. You feel like they're family to you or friends to you. So when you see them, it's not as surreal, but you also want to go see them more often. It's not like a one big time event because there's so many of them, and they do a good job of attending a lot of them to give you more access to them. So I think it's all really cool. The amount of access you have, I quantify the relationship of the celebrity star relation, or the celebrity fan relationship for esports is way different and way more unique than the celebrity fan relationship with any other celebrity in the world, because you have so much more access, right? Even the Twitter, social media, Facebook gave us direct access to these stars, but insofar as that they find your message out of hundreds of thousands of messages that you receive every day. Whereas now, if I pay $5 to message Dr. Lupo, he's gonna definitely see it, he's gonna read it, and then maybe respond to if it's a question, right? Like the amount of access you have is so much different, and because I have access now to you, I can create trust with you. I can build a relationship with you that wasn't there before. It's more than just I see you on TV, but now I see you on TV, and I've talked to you at least a few times to engage in conversation with you.
Okay, so you mentioned a few things here where the business side, since you've lacked in these business experience, right? But what you make up for is your ability to research, right? Your ability to think critically. And my offer to you, my challenge is like go out and attend these events. Go out and network with people IRL and online, like you've done with me, and
Yeah,
you'll start to see more opportunities where the knowledge that you have right now, the experience that you have with research and the things that you just learn, right? Because if you're not learning, you're regressing, you're dying. So what you're learning right now, you can apply these directly to businesses, and this is what I challenge you to start doing. So instead of just researching, right, and just kind of like uh, getting the data, gathering the information, and turning it into knowledge, with your experience, start applying it to real world problems within the esports industry, and then you can come back and talk to me or somebody else that is like an executive position or a business owner, and I'll be like, okay, well, help me solve this problem, right? And
yeah,
then the problem usually most of the time at the executive level or business owner level is going to be pretty huge. So what your research will do for someone like me, right? You hand me your research, and I'll be like, okay, well, this is your project, right? You solve this problem, you get paid or whatever, then like you'll be on your way, so you get that real world business experience. But at the same time, right, like me, I wouldn't be able to solve the problems that you can solve with your research, right? Like I need your research to solve them. And so this is why you're in that unique position where you're like, I'm learning a lot, but at the same time, if I start applying all this data, information, and knowledge, and really help out someone like Adam, I can just be like, well, okay, Sal, this is my friend, he owns X business, or he does X investment with venture capital, right? And I can give you that introduction, but also I can give you that recommendation, right? Because you've helped with that business experience that I have, and that kind of applies directly to what you're doing in regards to your research. So let's say, for example, if you come out with me to an event in LA or the Bahamas or wherever it may be, where I'm doing, Rainbow Six Siege or NBA 2K12 or whatever it is at the time, you have this knowledge where the majority of people who think critically, they have this analytical mindset, that, if you want to call it. They can look at these events and they can see the people and they can see the engagement and they can see where the cash flow is, right? The economics behind the event. But what they can't see all the time, Sal, is the way all the dots really connect in terms of business. And you kind of see that right now. So you can see the bigger picture where, you know, uh, funds are going to be moved from, maybe NASCAR to the esports industry. And that's going to be a huge wave of funding, as you know. And so there's going to be times where your research right now, if you wanted to, all you have to do is ask, like, okay, well, Adam, what can I do with this research? And I'll just be like, okay, well, go talk to this person. This person's going to give you X project. And then maybe like a week from now, you have like some part-time esports job where we can get that esports experience, right, in terms of business. But you can also start using the research to, kind of help out the esports industry in a way that only you can, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny you mentioned consulting because that's what I do like part time anyway. I was just pitching an idea. So when I think of something and when I want to get into something, I go full in. I'm kind of like, no, if I'm gonna be in, I'm gonna be in. I'm gonna go all in, balls to the wall. So I was pitching an idea to a kitchen. It was brought to my attention by a close friend, and I really wasn't trying to get in the food industry, but I only pitched the idea because of the friend, how much I value the relationship. I had a really good idea for it, and the people loved it. But that only happened because I spent 3 or 4 weeks in the weeds learning about the industry. I grew up in the industry because my dad was a chef, so I grew up in the food industry. But being like growing up as a kid is different than learning about the ins and outs, how to make money. So I had to pitch the idea in 4 weeks, which was insane. Um, amount of time to learn an industry in a whole. But yeah, I think what you're saying is really cool, and getting that experience for me is huge. Because I realized the experience, you learn so much. You learn a lot by just eating shit too. Like when you fail, obviously not every idea you have will be successful. And you learn a lot from that failure too. For me, it's never a fail. It's always a learning opportunity to get better, to grow. That principle may not work this time, but it may work a different time, or that principle just may not work at all. I realize that I'm a fallible human being, which is I think my greatest asset is that I realize I could be wrong, and I'm okay to admit when I'm wrong and to try to go back to the drawing board and try again. If you've seen like, I always reference two pieces of film for my how I think and how I work through problems. First is if you've seen Avengers, then you've seen the scene with Tony Stark and the Hulk, and he asks the first one. He asks, "When did you become an expert in gamma radiation?" And Tony responds, "Last night." That's what I kind of take heart to myself, is like, if I can learn something as fast as possible to be able to apply it. Obviously that's like a film, so it's not possible, but with that kind of speed. And the second part I always think about is House. Have you ever seen House, when they all come together and they try to diagnose a disease? They throw everything to a whiteboard that they can think of and see what sticks, and then you kind of reverse engineer it back to the platform. And that's kind of how I do all my research. That's how I kind of learn. So I try to think of everything possible in a theoretical standpoint, and from theory, move to praxis, and from praxis, move to implementation of real life orientation. There's some times when it doesn't always work. Theory obviously fails us more times than not, but that's the part of the research process. But then how do I apply that into business, right? And that's where you start to make money, and you see the economics behind it. How do you make money for companies and maximize their ROI using KPIs? And that's where I'm trying to get into now, and learning that space more in depth, because I can tell you the theoretical behind it, but now it's time to get into the pragmatics, the pragmatism of the industry.
Yeah, so I started off similar to you. So a few months ago, I was working at AutoZone. I quit being an entrepreneur. I quit being a mentor, for esports. And I was like, I just want a job. I just want to go to work, sell some auto parts, and go home and just like be happy. And so I was super happy doing that for a while. And then I realized, there are people still asking me to do esports things. There are people still asking me to coach or mentor. And I'm just like, man, I don't want to do this, but I have the demand, right? So there's like the opportunity cost for me is like, well, I lose the job that I love and I enjoy doing, but at the same time, like, I could also lose, the esports industry, where people are like, well, Adam, you have all this knowledge and you have all this experience, but at the same time, like, you're not using it anymore. So what was the point, And I'm just like,
Yeah.
that's a very valid argument. And so I didn't want to waste the knowledge or experience. And that's why I have these discussions with people, because I'm telling you from my own experience, right? Like, when you get into the pragmatic parts of things, where, in my case, I'm working with venture capital now. So I'm growing and scaling esports companies, millions of dollars. And like, they're thinking really long term, like, 5, 7 years, 10, 20 years out. And I'm like, you guys have to implement very fast, because when you start executing on these theories, and you develop routines for success and things that often fail as well, you figure out what works and what doesn't work very quickly. And the way you approach this is it's very smart, right? It's very intelligent, but at the same time, like, you can only go so fast on your own. So like, if you had maybe one or two people on your team or somebody that can help you with the research, and also another person that can help you with the implementation and also execution. So you have this kind of ecosystem around yourself, where you're like, okay, well, how do we solve a problem as quickly as possible? But at the same time, right, how do we document, the solving process, and how do we also communicate the solving process in a way that, someone like me, who's a business person, can understand, but also someone who maybe is just getting into esports can also understand, because they're not going to know all these terms about marketing, or even what an esports micro influencer is. Like, they're not going to know all these things. So uh, being able to communicate that very effectively, and what you've been able to do so far, is very important. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I try keep the answers concise as much as possible. I'm a talker by heart, so I try to keep them to a nice, palatable thing, because obviously tangents aren't good for anyone's attention span. So I worked hard on that, but that's definitely a skill that's developed and not given.
Yeah, man. There's a few questions I want to ask you. So
Yeah.
in regards to the way you approach, your theory crafting, and the way you want to be pragmatic, right? What do you feel would be one of your biggest obstacles in terms of being pragmatic with your theories?
So it's a lot of it has to do with you don't know what you don't know. That's a big one. Is you have to sometimes when you have theories, when you create theories, in that process, it's you're limited to how much information that you have prior to that session. So whenever I'm creating theories, they get better the more I know the day prior to. Whereas when you first start off, right, let's say tomorrow someone came to me from the trucking industry and said, "Hey, can you write a plan for us how to maximize profits for our trucks?" I have no idea about the logistics industry. So the more like this session, if I entered into a theory session right now, I would know nothing. My theories would be all over the place. They could be so many ideas, and the more I learn about the industry, the better they get. So I think the biggest thing is just you don't know what you don't know. I don't know what I don't know sometimes, and so they can be lofty out there, and they have to be drawn back in, and that's where the secondary part comes into. The next part about theory is sometimes it's too lofty for most people to understand. Um, when you think about things, when you're playing chess and not checkers, I've learned that some people just play checkers, and they're not seeing 8 moves ahead, and so that becomes overwhelming, and then it doesn't get your point across either. So you have to kind of lessen how much stuff I put into it, just so it becomes more palatable again. So those are the two big things: is making sure I'm not thinking too grandiose and having too big of ideas to where it's not palatable, and then also making sure that I'm knowing enough to be able to have an efficient session. You don't, to me, I don't engage in theory all the time. Takes a lot of brain power to do that kind of thought process and to engage in that kind of thought process. So I can schedule out sessions for myself when I'm actually thinking in that way, and engaging in that thought process where it's truly creative, truly unique, and truly in-depth free thought. Which you shouldn't. I mean, people should engage in it more, but you should engage in it 24/7. That's when you become someone like Montaigne or something, where you just constantly thinking about things. You also get in trouble that way too.
Yeah, I see this a lot within the people I work with sometimes, and they ask me these questions. On LinkedIn, they're like, how do I do this? How do I raise like $1 million or something in capital? And I'm just like, you know what? Instead of focusing on the how, because the how's super important, and obviously like it's going to take you a while to learn that, but I'm just like break it down into smaller steps. Like what's kind of the first step that you need in order to raise capital in esports. And I'd be like, okay, well, you need to have some type of strategic initiative. You need to have some type of fundable strategy. And those are two separate things, right? You need to have the fundable strategy and the strategic initiative. So like they're already outside of raising capital, and they're kind of breaking things down step by step, and they think in terms of how do I do a fundable strategy, or how do I create a strategic initiative? And I'm just like, well, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh man, there's all these steps and it's so complicated. And I'm like, yeah, this is why not everybody should do it. It's a
Yeah.
time-consuming process, which it involves a lot of theory crafting, right? And like I'm in some sessions that are 8 hours or more sometimes of people just doing strategy, and like they ask me, they're like, Adam, this is so much to like digest, and I'm like, yeah, man, this is not what I expected my career to kind of evolve into, but it's what's needed right now. And there's a lot of people who don't have the business acumen to kind of communicate these strategies and really create strategic initiatives efficiently in the esports industry. They just kind of look at what's working for other people and they try and implement it and they try and execute on it, but then like it doesn't work because they haven't broken it down into simpler steps that are actually applicable to them, and they actually like are pragmatic for them, and like they don't see that self-awareness side being very useful for them. They just kind of want to go out and do it and get the money. And I'm just like, man, that's 99% of the time it's not going to work. But there are a
It's the
few,
old,
yeah, there are a few
it's the old
occasions.
saying. It's the old saying when you create a goal, create a plan, then work the plan.
Mhm.
And that's like I think what you're talking about a lot of times is people want to focus on the goal and not the weeds. Well, that's
Yeah.
where all the fruit is. That's where all the labor is. That's where all the. That's when you realize like this is actually attainable. When you start working the plan, you start hitting the mini steps, the mini goals. Because it's so easy. It's so easy to get bogged down by that lofty $1 million. But when you break it down into small goals, it's not that hard.
Yeah. And so, like, to piggyback on what you're saying, one of my clients, he's talking about how he's distressed about not understanding things, and I'm like, man, you know what? There's gonna be so many things you're not gonna understand about esports. So just like, the sooner you get over that, the better your life is gonna be. Because me, I've been in the esports industry for over a decade now, this year, and like, there are so many things I don't understand, even with all the businesses I've been involved in and mentoring. Like, I know what I know, and there are blind spots that I have that I'm aware of, and there are blind spots that I have that I don't have any idea about. And so I tell people all the time, give me advice, give me feedback, be as harsh as possible, be as ruthless as possible. Because if I don't get your feedback, I'm gonna make a mistake, and it's gonna cost somebody millions of dollars. And like, there's no excuse for me making mistakes like that, where I could be the defining factor of what makes a business successful or very successful in terms of long-term strategy, or maybe they fail next year. Like, that's something that's very important to people. And like you said, breaking down these steps is something that people often skip, and they have no idea of the consequences, right? Because you can't control the consequences. You can only control what you're doing in the present, and you should really be learning more and actually understanding, what are the proper steps to take. Because once you get to the $1 million, right, you're gonna be like, oh, well, that wasn't so difficult. But then, like, when you look back, you're gonna be like, oh, wow, there was actually so many different steps I had to take to get to this point, and each step was necessary, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, when you make a PB&J, you can't make a PB&J. You can't make without having a knife or a spoon. I mean, there are many intricate steps that happen, that detailed steps, that you realize that maybe minute and have no significance on the grand scheme of things. But when you look back at it, you're like, wow, that really helped. That one step was the catalyst. I sold Cutco for 2 years, and I was really good at selling Cutco. I don't know if you know what Cutco is. Cutco's a kitchen cutlery. It's sold in houses. You make it and you do demos in homes, and it's really hard. A lot of people do it, and most people fail at it. It's tedious. It's hard. It's different, uncomfortable, and you do it when you're like 18, 19, 20. So it's not like you're not really used to this kind of industry things. But when you sell Cutco, the amount of little steps that are the catalyst for big sales is huge. I couldn't sell a single. When I first started selling Cutco, I had one no sale and I sold 10 small pieces. Couldn't sell a single set. I talked to my manager about it, and he's like, "Oh, you just push this set more, push this set more." I was like, "Okay, whatever." I had to switch up my whole routine to fit my personality and fit my style. And I started making a connection about people's homes and how this would just be great for their family to cook more. Like that little change, that little shift in my dialect from talking about just the business aspect and the money aspect, but to adding value to them as a family and talk about them more as a family and not just people, was what led me to sell massive amounts of sets. So that small detail, which most people just think, oh, that's just a giving. Talk about family. Yeah, but talk about family in a way that's adding value to their family and keep mentioning their family, family, family. So they realize they're buying it for a family, and now it's not a purchase of one, but it's a purchase from 5 people contributing to this purchase of whatever I'm selling. It's for the family, so it's going to be a different number. They're going to feel like it. When they want to buy it, they're going to feel like I'm buying something for the family. I'm buying a couch or a television, so I don't mind spending $2,000 on this product because it's for my family. It's not for me as a person. So it shifts the mindset, the psychological mindset, which for me was huge in sales, to sell big sets. Same thing with raising money. Finding the minute details that will catapult you into success is huge.
Yeah, man. I skipped that earlier where I was getting into venture capital, right? And I was thinking, how do people raise all these millions, or like multi millions or like the $1 billion exits? Like, how do people do this in venture capital? Like there's so much failure rate. Like 9 out of every 10 businesses fail, and like when people pitch to investors, 60% of them pitch, and then 60% of them, will fail because they don't have something correct in terms of the way they're pitching, right? So their valuation is most likely wrong in that 60%. And I'm just like, man, that's a huge barrier most people have, because when they pitch, even if you're not raising capital, right? Even if you're just communicating with someone, the way you communicate is you build a story, you build something that's not just presentable but relatable for people, so they can understand and accept, and then you can validate. And like there's this process of communication that works best for humans, but like a lot of people, they don't think in terms of what is the logical way to communicate. They think in terms of emotions. They're like, okay, well, what do I really want, and like how do I get it? But then I'm like, it's not, you don't start at really what you want all the time. You start at, okay, well, what does this person want? And how do they feel? What are their thoughts? What are their pain points and their concerns and their worries and all these different things, and all these variables you got to consider. And then you can talk about maybe how you can provide value to them, and then maybe you can talk about a real pitch, and then you can go on to things like maybe a sale, or maybe you have another call, right? And so it's just like these intricate steps that you build upon. Or a lot of people, they try to do what you're doing, right? They try to research and they try to get pragmatic, but they fail at getting pragmatic, right? They fail at becoming a person who understands these processes, and it's very important to understand them, right? Or else you can't raise millions, right? Or else you can't sell. And so I thank you again for that, because that's something that I don't see enough of in esports, and there's very few people who approach esports the way you do, and they're finding success once they finally have that, you know, pragmatic behavior down.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, learning to fail, like, right? I mean, I sucked at Cutco for the first 3 weeks. 4 weeks, I couldn't sell a single thing, and that for me was a motivating factor that I wanted to. First of all, I didn't want a real job. To be honest, yeah, I kind of wanted going to college in the fall. It was the summer before my first year of college. Kind of wanted to just mess around with my friends and hang out, and so this was like a way to make money without going to 9 to 5 or without going to an office. So I was like, I'm gonna be successful at this. I just had to figure out how. My first 3 weeks, I sucked. I was terrible. And so then I got serious about it and really delve into it, and that's when I got really good. And that was because I worked the plan, I worked the steps and the processes, and I realized if you do that just in life, right? If you try to do that in life as much as possible, you'll be successful. Obviously, you fail a lot. So I mean, I'm not perfect at this process. I fail a ton about this process, but I also realize that this process is what's needed to be successful in a lot of industries, especially in businesses. Business is the one that I know the best. Um, Business and nonprofits, they both have to work these processes to become successful. So I know that's where I can hang my hat on. Obviously, I struggle in other ways. And if you ask me process about healthy living, probably not the best person to ask about that. But processes about how to, run create a strategy for esports industry, I can probably do that one effectively. Or how to create a process for a gym, I can tell you how to do that. I can tell you how to eat properly, how to fitness. That's not what I can do. Processes like that, my trainer will tell you I suck at it. But those are the different things where I can think differently, especially in the business world.
Yeah, man. There's parts of your story that are unique and super valuable to me, because like it's one of the people who have these discussions with me. They're like, "Well, Adam, how did you do it?" And I'm just like, "Well, just listen to Sal. Listen to what Sal's story is. He's done what I've done. Like this is the reason why I'm doing what I do, it's because I've gone through a lot of failure. So in my own experience, I didn't grow up so business savvy. What I realized is I have a family of entrepreneurs, right? My mother, she ran a business. My brothers, they are in business, and like my sister, she was also in business. And I realized everybody's in business around me, but I'm not in business. I'm just in my room playing video games and trying to understand how to create better fast combos and like whatever game it may be, maybe like Super Smash Bros, right? So like that's what I'm thinking about after school. But then a lot of people are telling me just because you want to kind of improve in terms of video games and esports, it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen, because the way you improve, right, you have to go through oftentimes a lot of failure. And
Yeah.
if you try to skip the failure process, right, you won't improve at all. Like, you need to fail or else you won't reach that success. And so to see someone who has experienced that failure and also the success, right, that's something that a lot of people need to see in esports, because a lot of times I just see, the ninjas, right, or the people who are becoming so well known, like Dr. Disrespect, and I'm just like, man, these guys have years of failure that you don't know about, and that's the reason why they're successful. Like, you won't hear the documentaries about their years of failure because that's not going to be the super happy story, but that's the reality of it.
100%. I mean, I took a massive L just last year. I just like in my personal life, right? I mean, you take L's all the time. I put in an event that absolutely busted, failed, mostly because of my own fault. It was my first ever event. I was running it. I was new to all this stuff. I was new to the event stuff, and um, definitely busted one on my ass. And people let me know about it, and that was okay because I learned from that mistake. I learned from that process, and then when I do an event again, I'll make sure I'm better. And that's part of the process. When you fail, making sure you're also willing to have people around you that tell you the truth and are honestly and genuine. Like, hey, listen, that really didn't go too well, and here's why. They're still going to be in your corner moving forward too. And that's something I had to learn. I'm still learning how to trust people in that nature of having people in your corner too. That's really hard, and some people have that skill more than others. So if whoever has that skill, I applaud you for that, because that's a skill you have to learn. But having folks in your corner that are going to be honest with you and tell you, hey, listen, how it is, and tell you when you do well, they're going to love on you and tell you did well. When you did bad, they're going to also love on you and tell you how bad you did. I think that's also really important in this business world, especially as entrepreneurship. I have a lot of friends in entrepreneurship, and I have a lot of friends that do it as a serial entrepreneur, where they start a company and then they bounce, start a company and bounce, start a company and bounce, and they're really good at that. But it's because they have a strong network behind them, keeping them supportive, because I know that they've had some ups and downs, right? When it didn't look like they were going to be able to pay anybody the next month, and they got a lucky break. So in that process, it's great to have a team around you that can support you. I think that's huge when it comes to that too. That support team, and how do you? Because when you're as an entrepreneur, if you're doing it by yourself, it's going to be extremely tough. It's already tough enough to do in general, but doing it by yourself with no support system is even harder. So you have to try to find a support system, even if it's friends that you kind of know. Get close to those friends. If it's not family supporting you, I understand sometimes family is kind of iffy because it's a new thing. It's something new. It's odd. It's not the norm. It's not the American norm of going to work and being stuck at a desk for 8 hours, going home and having PTO. But if that's not for you, that's not for you. So I think that's, to me, is what I learned the hard way. I'm still learning, right? I'm still working 9 to 5, so I can't really talk about that. But I'm still trying to, for entrepreneurs that are truly entrepreneurial, right? I'm kind of entrepreneurial-ish. Yeah, I like entrepreneurship insofar as that it leads me to what I want to do, which is the consulting side of things and the business side of things. But some folks are like just completely entrepreneurial when they want to start from ground zero, create a concept, grow the concept, bounce. I think the biggest thing behind that is having a support system. Support is huge. Without that, there is no success, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's only one occasion in my life where I didn't have a support system, right? And I reached that success because I just went out on my own, right? And I didn't have any other options. So in my own experience, right, I was homeless and houseless in high school. I was 18. My family voted me out of the house, and they're like, "You can't live here anymore. You don't have a job. You're not preparing for university. You're not preparing to graduate from high school. Being 18, I was running my own business in esports, and I was doing graphic design. And so I was like, you know what? I can support myself doing this if I just go full time. But there are all these forces, people telling me, you got to graduate from high school, you got to go to university, you got to get a job. And I'm just like, I don't need a job. I'm profitable. Like, how many 18-year-olds do you know that are profitable with a business that has, like, zero to no overhead? And like, it's just very difficult for people to understand that unless they've done it. And so they think that you need that backup strategy where, like, okay, maybe you go to high school, you get your diploma, right? I have my diploma, but like, did that get me a job? No. I worked at McDonald's, I worked at Culver's, I worked at AutoZone. The diploma didn't help me. And so I went to university after that. And university helped me? No, I got one opportunity to work at a marketing company in Salt Lake City, but then I crashed my car, and so I couldn't work at that company anymore. And guess what? University didn't help me there. I couldn't go back to that job, and just because I had the education, right? I had the knowledge, uh, the proper way to use the knowledge, right? The proper way to build these support systems where they understand your strengths and weaknesses, and they have that self-awareness with you. That's very important because my family and my friends, the majority of them, they didn't understand that I was an entrepreneur. And that's what I already chose to be an entrepreneur in high school. I wasn't going to have a normal 9 to 5. I just couldn't do it physically. I couldn't sustain that lifestyle. And so the way I achieved my success was doing the opposite of my entire family, right? Most of my friends, they went to school. I stopped going to school. They went to jobs. I stopped going to jobs. I just worked on my business. I had some success. I became a professional consultant, professional advisor, professional coach. And that's why I'm here now, because I didn't give myself another option, but I had to build that support system, right? Like I did it myself in the beginning, but like it's only thanks to that support system that I'm where I'm at now, because I had to change the people I'm hanging out with. I had to change the people who I would call my family, right? My real family, they think that a lot of what I'm doing, they're like, oh, it's fake, or oh, it's just games. And I'm like, no, I'm working with people who are millionaires and billionaires, like they're obviously not fake, they're obviously very real, and you can look at their companies and talk to them even, or attend an event, and talk to them like they're very real people. But taking all that back, when I was younger, a teenager, they couldn't see the vision that I had, right? They couldn't see me getting into venture capital. They couldn't see me becoming someone who was different from them in terms of finances, right? And so that support system that I had at the time, it wasn't the correct support system for me. It was the support system for someone who lived the lifestyle of my family and friends, if that makes sense. And so that was something that I had to learn at a very young age. The people who you're spending time with the most are often the people who are your family and friends, and they hold you back the most. They don't want you to succeed in terms of changing the way you think and changing the way you really want to live your lifestyle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. You had some more questions, I think, right?
Yeah, man. So your entire experience, outside of the research and being able to theory craft and having this great understanding of, economics, what has been kind of the biggest success in terms of your research so far? Like, what has been something that you learned recently and it really opened your eyes?
Yeah, so I've got one of my really close mentors is also in D&I, and he's in D&I, and we're talking about D&I stuff, and we're having a conversation about D&I and hospitals for some reason, and I had mentioned hospitals being big for esports, especially children's hospitals, and he's like, why? He was asking about why and how that works. So like, he asked me to write a paper. He asked for a 1-page paper on the esports industry. I took that as okay, and I wrote a 17-page paper over esports marketing in diversity and inclusion. And diversity and inclusion was only a small piece of it, so I didn't want it to be bogged down by D&I. So I know D&I, but I don't know D&I. If that makes sense. I know it as in I know a little bit about it. I know enough to be dangerous, but there are far better people that are in D&I, and to know so to be respectful of their craft. I didn't want to engage in too much in the conversation, but I wanted to give a kind of like a start of the conversation, and then let people, whoever saw it, could then take it from there and engage the conversation further. So I wrote a 17-page paper on esports marketing, over and using the research that I kind of found myself, coupled with the knowledge that I just have by creating theories and looking at practices, looking at practices of other people that are in this industry. So I wrote this paper, and then at the end of it, I went back to do a quick final check over the paper, and I saw that Nielsen had released a paper very similar. The only problem was I had no money to do actual research, like to do like data research. So I was using other people's data that they had already published. and using that to kind of prove my points. Nielsen obviously has much more funds to create data from scratch, and we had similar outcomes, similar theories, similar ideas. To me, that was super reassuring. That hey, listen, I'm on the right track. I'm one of the leaders in the data industry when it comes to this kind of stuff, and like I have the same theories that they have. So that was really validating for me. That was like one of my bigger wins. It just happened in January. For me, that was super cool.
Awesome, man. You've got this character about you where you have this experience, you have this ability to learn, and you use this knowledge in a way that very few people will go out and they're actually gonna challenge themselves to write a 17-page paper because their mentor had asked them to, right? To rise up to that potential that you had. I applaud you, man. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. That was definitely, I think it was more of my own perfectionism than anything. It was supposed to be one page, and I just couldn't. Because once I got into it, I realized that to be thorough enough to do this, I had to take more time, and to give a proper education, I can't do it in a short one page paper. There's not enough room on the page to do that kind of work. So I decided to do it some justice and give it justice and give it some kind of spin. It's been a flair, if you will, that only I can. And so appreciate your kind of words. But I would not recommend people embark on that road. Once you go down that rabbit hole, you can't get over it until you finish it. At least I couldn't. And there were nights when I was like at 2 a.m. I gotta go to bed. Like I just can't keep writing. Because you gotta write, then rewrite, then you edit, then you rewrite. So that process that took me 3.5 weeks to write that paper. Would not recommend it.
Yeah, man, that is extraordinary, man. Thank you so much for your real time and giving me your energy to commit to this discussion, man. I've enjoyed myself, and I'm open to any questions, comments, or concerns you may have for me, man. If you want to ask them.
No, yeah. I mean, I just want to chat. I mean, we were just chatting, right? We were having a conversation. For me,
Yeah.
the biggest thing is always conversation and engaging in that relationship. This is a great first step, right? I mean, I think I shared some of my story. I heard some of your story too, which I think is really cool, right? Your perseverance, your valleys, your peaks, your valleys, and you staying the course and falling off the course and hopping back on the course, right? That's really humanistic, and really awesome of you to just share and to talk about in a very authentic and real way. I think I did the same. I tried to share with you a little bit about who I am and where I come from in my story in this industry, realizing that it's not unique to me at all. But it's also very real to who I am. It's a process to which I hold dearly to my heart. So I think there's no questions. We kind of in that the conversation. There's no like I have XYZ questions. I didn't come prepared with those. I didn't think that's what this was. This was more of a conversation. And if I can connect with anybody, I mean, I know my network's pretty small in this industry. Let me know. But if you have anyone that I should meet with or talk to, or even any problems that come up that you want to shoot my way and see if I have any thoughts on, I'm more than happy to spend some time just thinking about things and giving you my thoughts and different problems that arise. If I can help out in any way that way. If I can be your ace in the hole kind of thing. If you ever need me, just give me a call or shoot me a message. Definitely try to come through for you in a big way if possible. For me, I believe in relationships more than anything else. I don't really care about money. So if I wanted to be rich, I'd go into banking. I'd go to New York and got into finance, but I didn't. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to help people. So if money is not my biggest motivator. It's more relationships and people and how I affect those and how I can help people grow and reach their goals. I told you I just pitched an idea yesterday to my mentor's friend, not because I really cared about the idea so much. I do, because it's my baby, but I cared about it now because I created it. I pitched it because I cared about him. I cared about the person that was trying to create something new for herself, and she wanted something different. And I was like, I can help you make something different. That's why I pitched the idea, not because I really cared about the idea in the first place. Afterwards, I got invested mentally and time-wise, and so now I'm really invested. So that's just how I am as a person. If I can invest in you time-wise and mentally, I'm down for it. If you ever need me to do anything for you as far as research goes, or just give you some ideas, I think differently than most people. So If you have a problem that I can kind of give my opinion and my 2 cents on, it might be helpful to reach out to me, and then I can give you my 2 cents that's going to be different. I promise you they'll be different than anyone else's ideas because I'm just that person. I'm that one guy that probably tells you the most outrageous thing possible. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why I am that way. It's because I think that um, thinking that you can't continue to be a copy of people, and when you copy people, you don't become your own original self. And that to me, I learned the hard way. I learned the hard way that I'm learning the hard way, but you have to be your original self, and you have to give out your own ideas, no matter how messed up or how weird they may be. And sometimes they stick, sometimes they fail, and that's just how the dice roll sometimes.
Yeah, man. There's been a few points in the conversation where I'm just like, man, if I had known about you earlier, I would have asked you all these, multi-million-dollar questions. I'd be like, Sal, how would you solve this, and like give you like, these points X, Y, and Z, and be like, okay, let's just break into it right now. We would have spent like, hours and hours discussing, but it's cool that you value the relationship, right? You value that collaboration between people, because a lot of people they'll schedule these appointments with me, I label them, esports mentor discovery session, where I'm just like, let's just talk, man, let's just have a discussion. But then they'll come with me with the question like, okay, I'm developing X company with like this many employees or this much revenue or like whatever, variables, and they're like, how do I achieve this? And I'm like, okay, we have like an hour to talk, man. This is gonna take us like 3 days. Like, this is not the way discussion usually flows when you meet somebody, right? You just start off with a hello. You start off with a smile, a handshake or something, like to greet the person, and you really connect with them and engage in them with the same level of respect that you have for me, right? And the way some people have started to approach esports, right? They schedule these appointments and they come in with all these questions and concerns, but I'm like, man, if I had all of this time to give to you, which I do, 90% of my day is just mentoring people for free, but like the other 10%, I have to work with angel investors and different businesses. And so like, I have to be very focused in that 10%. And so this 90% of the time where I'm just having discussions with people like you, Sal, I'm just thinking to myself, there's got to be a way that this discussion can, help Sal. There's got to be a way this discussion can show Sal that there's another way to, go about thinking about esports, because a lot of what we think right now, if you want to call it dogma, if you will, like people are set in their ways, but like esports is not going to be about valuations and like crazy deals for like the next 30 plus years, like long term, it's going to be more about, okay, well, how do we create a mutually beneficial long-term relationship through collaboration? And like, nobody really thinks like that right now. And so that's a good site to really see the way you approach discussion and way you approach different industries in terms of learning about it, to research, and also just really being a good human being, right? Like you're respectable with your ethics, morals, and your honesty, and you value that relationship in terms of discussion, man. So thank you again for that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Just try to be a good person and try to give you the best of who I am. And that's always evolving, changing, and becoming, growing. Right? You gotta Plato, and he says, or Socrates, Plato, and it says, "The human life is not worth living." Right? Or you get a Dorothy Day's sermon in Martin Luther King, which says, "You learn to die daily." Right? You have to learn how to sometimes die to yourself daily to grow and to be that person. And those aren't my words; those are from Cornell West, who I borrowed those from him. But those are things that hold my heart. Right? Those kind of two phrases. And I obviously I'm learning, and I fail daily at that too. I fail daily at those two things. When I want to be bullheaded, I want to be brash. I want to be, I don't want to be that great person 24/7. And so, I mean, I realize that you have to grow. That's part of being human, right? Yeah, it's part of just being human. But at the end of the day, I realize that people are human beings as well too. I try to respect them as much as possible and be in their corner 100% all the time. And that's, if you respect someone's human dignity, that's the least you can do as a person. Respect the most human dignity. And that's what I try to do. Sorry to get philosophical on you. I don't mean to get philosophical for a second, but you kind of got into that realm, so I had to respond to that same conversation, that same voice.
Yeah, man. Like, it's just good to have discussions like this, for me personally, because like I have so many appointments, where there should be discussions like this, where we can just talk, but then
Yeah.
they digress, they fall into this category where it's like it's no longer a discussion. It's more like a kind of monster that I'm just like, well, how do I kill this? And like
Yeah.
people, they're like, I thought this is the reason you had the appointment with me. I'm like, no, this is not the reason why I give you an hour of my time to like go over all these things that like they're not really gonna be so important to your life out of outside of this discussion,
Yeah.
and it's funny because the way you approach things, Sal, is the way people don't approach things mostly in life. They go about things in a way that's not it's not very beneficial for even themselves and most times. And I'm just like, man, you've got to change the way you think about just treating yourself and also other people, or else you won't get to that success that you want. You won't be able to raise capital. You won't be able to be professional in esports. Like these things matter very much, in terms of like soft skills or philosophy even.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I can go for days with that conversation, that topic about and understanding human behavior at the most basic level, right? Because obviously, I'm not asking to be a PhD in human psychology. I am asking though to be understanding of someone's ability to think critically and someone's ability to have human dignity, and that's something I think that's important. And those are just basic human skills that we have tended to lack in implementation in some regards in society to no fault of our own. Well, it's our fault actually, but to no one's detriment, I guess. Insofar as that we don't know, we don't know. And back to the point of we don't know what we don't know, and that's things that we just don't know anymore. That we just kind of lost in development of time. Some of these basic human skills that I think are so simple, some people are so complex. So it is what it is. It's a c'est la vie. Try to be the best person I can, and if I can touch someone else to be the best person they can, and that can inspire someone else to be the best person they can be. I mean, that's the ripple effect, right? You don't try to fix the world one time; you try to fix the world by one person at a time. And you just put an army around you, one by one by one, and one turns into two, two turns into four, four turns into six, or eight, and so forth.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah.
That'll be it for me, man. I'm gonna go ahead and really just digest all of this and kind of understand that there's quality people with quality discussions out there waiting for me.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy. And also, I'm gonna have this session kind of uploaded to YouTube within the next day or two. I want to say. I don't think I need to edit it, so that's gonna be a good thing to share, family and friends, and be like, okay, well, this is what Adam thinks about X, Y, and Z in this discussion. To be to your, I guess, benefit in terms of esports validation, right? You're on the right track. So that's something that you can also share with people and be like, okay, well, this is what Adam thinks. And now that I have this kind of a corner where Adam's like, okay, yeah, I agree with Sal. This is the way you can kind of move forward and progress, man.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, if I ever need anything, if I can ever do anything for you, let me know. If you ever need me to think about something for in a different way, hit me up in a message, and I'll give you my thoughts as soon as possible. Because I think we're in a 3-hour time difference. So I think are you in Mountain Time or West Coast time?
It's Mountain Time, yeah.
So a 2-hour difference. So yeah, if you ever need me, just call me, shoot me a text, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I'll get back to you as soon as possible with some ideas. Like again, just me being me. That's just who I am.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for your time, man. And I will speak with you very soon, bro.
100%. See you later, bro.
See you, man.
Bye.